Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Burton, and I just got back from Walt Disney World, and I have 5 lightning lane tips I want to share with you today that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about. So the first lightning lane tip that I feel like transformed my trip was the fact that even though your multi-pass or single pass lightning lane says it's for a 1-hour period, it actually will not expire until 2 hours after the end time that it shows in the app. So I had heard a lot of YouTubers talking about this, people I trust a lot. And so we ended up using this on our trip, and it worked every single time. We went in August 2025, and what happened, for example, is you have a lightning lane that is for 9 to 10 a.m. Well, if you usually in the past, I've heard, okay, you can get there 15 minutes late, it'll still tap green when you tap your magic band. Well, instead of it just being 9 to 10, as long as you get there before 12 instead of 10, and I've actually heard like 12, it will be wrong. Like you want to get there at 11:59. So it's basically like your lightning lane window is actually 2 hours and 59 minutes instead of 1 hour. As long as you get there before it hits the 3-hour mark, when we went to tap our magic bands, it's not like the person had to forgive it or anything and it tapped blue and then they had to turn it green. The cast members didn't have to do anything. We literally just tapped our band and it went green like normal. So the reason why this is so life-changing is a couple of things. First of all, when you have a lightning lane that's longer, and let's say you're trying to limit your steps, right? So what we would have is we'd have a couple lightning lanes and I could kind of go around the park in the order that I wanted and say, okay, well, actually, let's go do this one first and then go do that one, because then we're not crossing back and forth. Also, I just felt less pressure running around the park, and it just totally transformed my attitude, the feeling, the pressure to have 3 hours instead of 1 for each lightning lane. So I think in the past I knew, okay, well, if we miss it, it might not be the end of the world. They might let us in but like I didn't want to make the cast members in an awkward position. I don't want to ask for anything. So the fact that I knew I wasn't going to be bothering anyone by doing that just really made such a difference. The other part about the 2-hour rule is that when you have the lightning lane, it's actually going to still show in the app for a little bit. And then after you've hit like the 3 hours, I think it did drop off eventually. But even if it's not showing, as long as you're there before the 3 hours, you can use it. The other part to that is that when that 1 hour is passed, you actually can go ahead and book your next lightning lane. You can go 2 hours late, or basically think of it as a 3-hour window. But the important part about this is when that first hour is up, you also get to book your next lightning lane. And so this is huge because you can end up having more than 3 lightning lanes if you think about it, because you can still use that like expired one that's late, and you can book your next one. So this is kind of a loophole I've seen people talking about, that you can actually have more than 3 lightning lanes at a time for that period when that one is past the 1 hour mark. So now you can book your next one, but you still technically can go back and use that old one because you still have an extra 2-hour window. Really, really life-changing. And that's just tip number 1. Next is tip number 2 is to use Standby Skipper. Standby Skipper is a third party that you can pay for 1 day or for a week, and it will help you to book your next multi-pass or your lightning lanes. Now, the reason this is helpful is not for the initial booking, but on the day of your trip. When you are in the parks and you have your first 3 lightning lanes, right? Let's say you are at Epcot and you have booked Test Track. My kids love Test Track. And then you've also booked 2 other Tier 2 rides, such as Soarin' and Living with the Land. Well, when you eventually go to use up your Tier 1 or Tier 2, whatever your first lightning lane is, and now you get to book a Tier 1, another Tier 1 one. So once you've used up your first lightning lane and now you can book another Tier 1 ride, sometimes that Tier 1 ride is already gone. Remy might not be available anymore at this point. So the reason why I love Standby Skipper is I have not once has Standby Skipper failed to get me a lightning lane, even if it was sold out. So basically what you do with Standby Skipper is you go into the app, you pick which lightning lane you want next. And the reason why this works is ahead of time, you add them to your friends and family list. So they don't have access to like your credit card or purchasing lightning lanes. You need to have already bought the multi-pass, and then you're just making them your friends and family. And then it allows them to book your lightning lane for you. And I guess because it's like a computer, the reason why this is really helpful is sometimes throughout the day, new lightning lanes will be dropped or people will move things around. And so there's lightning lanes that come up available. Well, the problem is those go really fast and I don't want to be swiping all day long, looking at my phone, trying to see if I can get another lightning lane and just hoping that one becomes available. And so the reason why the Standby Skipper is helpful is it will do that for you. It's constantly searching in the background and you can specifically, this is what I love, you can specifically tell it, I want to look from 4 o'clock to park close or 6 o'clock to park close, or I want to look for in the morning, like we're going to be park hopping later, so I only want to get it if it's going to be in the morning. So you can specify the time of day, and that's really helpful for us because what we might do is do some stuff in the morning, and then as soon as I kind of have my top ride I want to look for, I put it in the Standby Skipper, and it's just constantly searching, and then when it becomes available for that time period that I'm looking for, it will grab it up. And I have gotten Remy, I've gotten Test Track, I've gotten every single one that I've tried, Tiana's, and so basically it just saves me so much because we are able to do all the Tier 1 rides, even though they're already sold out, and I'm not looking at my phone. And I think it's like $45 a week for my entire family. And it just means I get so much more out of MultiPass. So that has been a game changer. So Standby Skipper, that's my tip number 2. Check it out if you haven't used it before. I feel like it's life-changing. Even with the changes that have happened with MultiPass now, I feel like just day of, it helps me to get more lightning lanes.
Now, of course, right after recording this, I found out about another tool called Weight Magic. It's through the Thrill Data website, and it's very similar to Standby Skipper, but it has a couple of important things and features that Standby Skipper doesn't. It actually will modify lightning lanes for you, and it will also book your initial lightning lanes for you as well. The price is also a little bit less. It's only $20 for the week or $50 for the year compared to $45 for the week for Standby Skipper. So I haven't used this before, but I've heard really good things. It does have more features. It does seem a little more complicated to use, but if you're going on a Disney trip, and I would also definitely check out Weight Magic as another option in addition to Standby Skipper.
Tip number 3 is that you can modify your lightning lanes to overlap with other things after midnight. So when you're initially booking your multi-pass, you or your single pass lightning lanes ahead of time, if you have like a dining reservation for lunch or breakfast, it's not going to let your lightning lanes overlap with the dining, and it also is not going to let like your single pass overlap with one of your multi-passes or your multi-passes. They all have to be separate time slots that don't overlap. And so what happens is, that might not work for your plan for the day. So if you go on after midnight or when you first wake up in the morning, you can actually modify those lightning lanes to get them to overlap. So if there's one that's not the exact time you want, I would look at changing those times after midnight on the day of that you're going to use the multi-pass. Tip number 4 is you can actually research and see what are the typical times that Disney drops additional lightning lanes for certain rides like Tron or Tiana's. And Thrill Data in particular, when we use this, and I saw that there were specific times that they had drops that were coming out, and we needed a lightning lane on our trip, and there weren't any available. And so what I ended up doing was looking at when the typical drop times happen, and then I set an alarm for a few minutes before that, and I actually did refresh and modify and get a new lightning lane, and it worked. So it's not always going to be the case. Like if the ride isn't running really well that day, you might not be able, they might not do those additional drops. But if everything's running fine, that's a good time to check if you're going, oh, I really want to have that lightning lane, and maybe you don't have Standby Skipper set up because Standby Skipper cannot modify your lightning lanes. It can only grab new ones. So if you haven't canceled it, or you're just like modifying, or maybe you don't have Standby Skipper and you're just trying to refresh and you don't want to be refreshing all day, then what you can do is just look up when is the drop going to happen possibly, set an alarm and refresh a few minutes before that. And that actually worked for us on our trip. So if you really need a specific lightning lane, look for the additional drop times. Then my fifth tip is similar to the midnight tip. Once you have used your first lightning lane, whether it was a tier 1 or a tier 2, you can now modify your other lightning lanes to be tier 1. So a great example of how you could use this is at Hollywood Studios, because Hollywood Studios has a lot of tier 1 rides that my family wants to do, and not as many tier 2 rides that they want to do. So let's say that you have a tier 1 ride like Slinky Dog Dash, and then 2 tier 2 rides, maybe Toy Story Mania and Alien Swirling Saucers. Well, my family doesn't really want to do Alien Swirling Saucers. They would rather do Mickey and Minnie's instead. So let's say we check in and our first ride is, let's say it's Toy Story Mania, because Slinky Dog is a little harder to get. So let's say they check in for Toy Story Mania, which is a tier 2 ride. Well, once they check in for that ride, you have unlocked everything. And so now you can change your other multi-passes to tier 1s. Those tier rules no longer apply. The tier restriction to only booking one tier 1 ride is just ahead of time. But once you've unlocked your first multi-pass by using it, you can now book other tier 1s. So you could modify that Alien Swirling Saucers to a different tier 1 ride. So especially if you're going first thing in the morning, it's really helpful to get a multi-pass as early as you can so that you can unlock that, and hopefully that tier 1 ride hasn't sold out yet. Or if you're using Standby Skipper like I do, you can even cancel that Alien Swirling Saucers. And even though Mickey and Minnie's might not be available still, I'll just put in a request for Mickey and Minnie's and hope that I get it. And I've always been successful in having Standby Skipper grab me what I need. So that is also super helpful. All right, that's it for today. Just those 5 tips. I hope they were a little helpful. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's video, and stay tuned for more Disney content. Thanks, everybody.